also like turned his hand really bad when he landed. His hand was like a constant grip. He's like, can I play guitar? The doctor's like, no, no, no. He's like,
Funny. All right, so we're good to go? All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming, everybody online. My name is Wes, and Allen Heath and Sound Pro. We're going to do a introduction and overview on one of the Allen Heath installation products, the AHM. And as you can see on here, audio DSP for any size job. Okay? What is AHM? Simply Scalable is a nice little tagline for what it can do, but we'll go through a couple of kind of introductory things to, I guess, introduce you to what AHM is capable of. So Allen Heath, obviously known for consoles, high quality, very high sound quality, easy to use, all those things. So what if they took all that information and developed something that you could use in a complete installation system, right? So the goal is to, help people be able to bring something in that's, again, that has a lot of processing, is affordable, and doesn't sacrifice anything on the quality side that Allen Heath is known for, right? So where would you use something like this? Well, obviously music venues, house of worship, but also restaurants, gymnasiums, theaters. It's very scalable, as you'll see, so that allows it to be integrated in anything from a small restaurant all the way up to a large PAC, right? What is it exactly? So the AHM is anywhere from the smallest is 8x8 up to a 64x64 matrix that processes audio for distribution. High resolution zone mixer, and it says that slide says complex, and I don't want to scare anybody. It is complex, but it's not hard to use, right? So when we start getting into software, you'll see all the different things you can do and kind of understand what I'm talking about there. There's a central processor that is very, very configurable. We'll get into some FPGA stuff, but it's configurable at its base level. You can change a lot of things about it. A hub for physical and or touch interface controls. You can have everything from BYOD to physical devices to interact with it, and everything in between. And again, an easy access point for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. You want something, anytime you're integrating any kind of audio distribution piece, people are going to be interacting with it. Most of the people are not AV people, right? So you need an interface that makes sense, they can touch or they can grab hold of, and it's easy to do. What it isn't is a video processor. This is audio only. There's no video component to this. So as long as you're keep that in mind, it'll make every installation much easier. Okay, power and flexibility. There's a couple of key points here to go over. It's easy, like a lot of the fixed architectures, when you're looking at DSPs, they're very easy to program, right? And so they wanted to keep that kind of workflow where it's super easy to use and super easy to lay out, but combine that with that more open architecture of a FPGA engine so you can do a lot more configuration within there. So trying to strike that balance between ease of use and complexity is sometimes difficult. And that's where the software comes in, frankly, the fact that they've been building consoles for so long that have gotten so much more advanced, but yet still very simple to wrap your brain around. That's a big help, right? But you want to be able to do sound management, paging, audio distribution, conferencing, speaker processing, all that within one box that's, again, easy to program. And it's super low latency, right? Allen Heath has been using FPGA engines for a very long time. They're very familiar with how to program them and how to work with them, so they brought that into the installation space. What sets it apart? Again, 96K, so FPGA, incredibly high audio quality. At the end of the day, if it doesn't sound good as an audio professional, if it doesn't sound good, it's not really good, right? Like I want something that sounds good. That's first and foremost. Now I also need something that's easy to program. I can just deploy quickly, efficiently, all those things. But audio for me personally is very high on the list. Uninterrupted audio during routing mix changes, right? So as you change things, your routing, any movement within the system, you need it to be able to not drop that audio and bring it back in. A lot of fixed architecture DSP, whenever you're doing anything like that, it's going to stop audio for a second or more, and when you're changing the routing, right? So that's something you don't want in the system. So you can do on-the-fly programming changes. No sacrificing in the processing, automatic firmware matching for any peripherals, wall boxes, anything like that, and physical controls, any of that stuff. You want to just, you do an update, everything updates, and you don't have to tell it all to update. It all just does it automatically behind the scenes. A big thing is the remote and wide area network admin access, being able to, as somebody who does installations, being able to remotely log into these things from anywhere on the planet and do some changes for your customer. Now, all of a sudden, you're talking about selling service, and we all know that that's a really good way to make money, selling service. And you're on vacation and you get a phone call from the install saying, "Hey, we're having this problem." You log in via Wi-Fi and fix their problem. That's you've kept that customer forever, and it's an ongoing revenue stream. So no licensing for any of this stuff. You buy the piece, and that's it. Software, everything, all that stuff's free. In fact, you can download all the software I'm going to talk about from the Allen Heath website for free right now. And again, easy programming. I am not a DSP expert in any shape, form, or fashion. I'm pretty good on digital consoles. But this makes so much sense in the way that when we get to the software of how to program it, it is very, very much something you don't have to spend a huge amount of time on. However, there's a lot of resources as well for any questions you might have. So some glamour shots there. The AHM 16, which is what I have here today and what we're going to be messing around with, is a 16 by 16 matrix. Processing matrix, right? They all have, all of the three models, the 16, the 32, and the 64, all have an I/O port for adding a I/O card, like Dante or Waves or Matty or anything you want. And that networking port is capable of up to 128 by 128, depending on which card you put in there. So that's all these different sources, audio sources you can bring into the system, right? It's got 2x2 local GPIO, and I say local because we have some remote GPIO that you can add to the system. I'll talk about a little bit later. It has a control network port. This network port is not for passing audio. This is strictly for control. So basically, you throw it on your network, and as long as your IP scheme is right, you can connect to it from any device you give access to. 8x8 local analog I/O. There are many, when we start talking about the everything I/O that Allen Heath does, there's lots of different ways to put I/O in different places, but just even locally, there's 8x8 there. Okay. When we get to 32, that's a 32x32 with an optional, this is the first step where you get the optional acoustic echo canceling module that you can purchase separately and put in there, so you can have AEC built into it. So now you're opening up a whole new range of things you can do with it from a conferencing standpoint, right? Again, same audio port, same 2x2, same control network. And 12x12 on the local as opposed to 8x8 on the 16. So yeah, these are the newest hardware pieces to the range, and one of the things that they do when you look at them is they have a front panel display. They're single rack space, front panel display, and you can do all those buttons you can set up in the software to be what you want them to be, right? They're soft buttons, and you just tell them what you want them to be. So you can do things like preset recalls or source selection or volume up and down. So in some situations, you might not want a hardware controller or, you know, a touchpad or whatever. You can just control the things that you need to control right from the touch panel with physical buttons on one thing, right? You know, so depending on your install, it gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to do. You know, I could totally see something like this in a bar scenario where they pick a source and they select that source and they turn it up and down. You know, there's no physical, you don't have to add any other hardware. It's just that piece. So very simple, all the way up to, again, some more complex things. The keys are backlit, and you can recall things and mute things and all that from the soft buttons. The programmable soft keys, you can see on the screen there, like as you cycle through different things, you know, that's obviously a source selection page where you can use the arrow keys to go up and down, do the source selection. You got some meters, but yeah, it's very selectable on what you can do. Now, this is the big boy, the AHM 64. It is a 64 by 64, and I would like to point out, per Allen Heath's naming convention, you can very much tell what a thing is by the numbers in the name, right? So obviously AHM 16, 16 by 16, 32, 32 by 64, 64 by 64, right? You have 12 local analog I/O. You have a built-in S-Link port. For those of you that weren't on the call yesterday, we're going to talk a little bit about the Everything I/O ecosystem, but a real quick primer on what S-Link port is. It is kind of the super link for Allen Heath. It reads all of Allen Heath's protocols from DSnake through DX and also the GigaAce protocol. So what that means is it's very easy to integrate existing wall boxes, rack mount, stage boxes, all these things to expand your I/O out to where you want to go with a built-in port on there, as opposed to having to use a card to get to that I/O. But this also comes with that card slot, and there's certain situations where you might have something coming off the S-Link port going to one thing and have a Dante card in there where you've got inputs coming into that and outputs going out to other wall boxes somewhere else in the system, using both at the same time. You know, that it gives you a lot of flexibility on your install of how you want to route audio back and forth. I mean, you can think of this like you could even use this in installs where you're doing campus-wide audio with an entire Dante network over a college campus, right? So yeah, there's a lot of situations where that's something that's necessary. Also, again, the 2x2 local GPIO, and one of the cool things about the AHM 64 is this comes with a DC backup power supplies input. So you can actually run DC power into this, so if something happens and power goes out, it'll continue to function on that backup DC power. Okay. Christopher, anything you want to add before we move on?
What would you use the GPIO for, Wes?
Okay. Well, if you're unaware of GPI and GPO, that's a way to interface electronically with different things to be able to do things like turn projectors on and off, open and close screens. It's basically a protocol that before you were doing network control for electronic control of things. What does GP stand for?
General purpose.
General purpose input and general purpose output.
Yeah. So what you're saying is I could just have a big emergency stop button, or I could send a relay to make a screen come down.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, absolutely. So good question.
I'm just playing your devil's advocate.
I appreciate that, because I will forget things. There's so much to talk about on this. I will miss things. Okay, so here's the front of it. It also has the ability to add an optional AEC module. This one, you're just going to have some status LEDs across the front. It also has chromatic metering in the front. So Allen Heath has, across a lot of their consoles, has the ability to do what their patented chromatic metering. So you set the colors based on what metering levels you want to look at. So you could, for example, have blue showing that there is signal, and you could set red at like plus 3 dB if that's where you wanted to see a red light at you, and everything in between, right? So you get to pick and choose what those colors are. So when you see them or your customer sees them, they know, oh, that's fine because it's yellow, or oh, that's bad, it's red, you know, or however you want to do it. So chromatic metering across the front for peak, multi-point peak detection. That's a good way of putting that. If only I had a slide that said that. Okay, just a quick look at the 3 different models and how they lay out together. You'll notice that 32 and 64 down at the bottom, they have the optional 12-channel automatic echo cancellation module that you can put in there. You also have user profiles. We'll go through that. IP controllers, mounted controllers. There's a bunch of easy information. So feel free to take a picture if you want to. For future reference. And we'll go through some of that. Talking about the I.O. cards, they use the same I.O. cards as Allen and Heath's SQ models. So if there's a card for that, it's the same card. So we have Dante, a 64 and a 32 channel Dante card, Waves card, another S-Link port, another S-Link card if you're on the AHM 64, or a single, obviously, because there's no built-in one, that you can put on the 16 or the 32, and MADI cards. So easy to connect across your network depending on your network needs. So there's a lot of sound management tools built into this, obviously, since it's a audio processor. You've got automatic mic mixers. You can do up to 8 different rooms in groups of 1, 4, and 8, right?
Yeah, so the HM16 has 1 mic mixer.
Right.
The 32 has 4.
4 and
the 64 has 8 different mic mixers. So
right.
in any one of those, you can allow all of the inputs that would be used for the processing matrix. Mm-hmm. All of those can be put into a mic mixer. Just with the larger ones, you get the ability to separate them out. So if you were doing a conference center and you were doing multiple rooms, you could have multiple automatic mic mixers.
Yes. So doing breakout rooms in conference centers gets very easy when you can have separate automatic mic mixing for each room that you can turn on and off. So, and do all kinds of things with. Ambient noise compensation. So being able to that's exactly what it sounds like. It's compensating for the amount of ambient noise in the room and making those changes based on, AC noise or, just general chatter kind of noise.
Yeah, one of the places we see that used a lot is like if you're putting it into a school and they have a cafetorium, right? It gets really loud sometimes and then really quiet. So if you're running a paging mic or background music, you want it to ride over the dynamic level that's in the room. So you throw a microphone in the room. Sometimes you'll see those piezo's in the ceiling or something. Run that back, and that detects what the dynamic level of the room is, and you can have the microphone automatically run, the program level automatically run over that background noise. In that case, then you're not really having somebody go over and turn a volume control all the time. Yeah. It just makes your life a little bit easier.
Yeah. It's more of a set and forget kind of thing in a lot of situations. And priority ducking kind of falls into that range as well, where you're going to, you can set up a priority channel and it will duck whatever's going on to bring down the volume of whatever's going on to make sure that is over the top. So you can do that for announcements. You can do that in a restaurant for, now seating table, the Johnsons or whatever. There's a way to, there's a lot of usage for that. There is 8-band parametric EQ, dynamics, and delay on every input and every zone. Okay, it's very important to think about that for a second because that's not something you get on a lot of audio processing. You have full processing on every input and zone or output, depending on how you want to look at it, right? It's a lot, and that's not something you see in a lot of places. Obviously, if you have the AHM 64, you have up to 64 zones. They're configurable for mono or stereo as well, so you can do stereo zones if you choose. Speaker processing with crossover filters, delays, limiters, and parametric EQ, and you can do anywhere from 1 to 4 on the speaker processing. So I have touring guys that throw this in their rack and use this for speaker processing and being able to process their speakers from an iPad that that they have control over at front of house and changing crossover points and, you know, any kind of limiting on, you know, mid bands or whatever. It makes your life so much easier. And as you'll see, you can just build out your own interface for that. So very, very cool. Room combining of up to 16 different rooms. Again, very much in a conference space where you might have an air wall in a big ballroom like a hotel or something. And sometimes it's, you know, you're using half of it, sometimes you're using the other half, or you have a bigger conference, that air wall goes away. You need to be able to combine that room together so it all acts as one room very quickly and efficiently. And it's a very easy way to do that. And again, using the custom control that I'm going to show you, you can also build out something that's very simple for your client to use.
Yeah, you can actually have it do it automatically as well.
Yes.
So if you were going to use a GPI, you could use wall sensors and to determine where the air walls were. I've seen them either be magnetic or IR. And so when the wall opens, it automatically combines the two rooms together. And then you don't have to have anybody really running that, so that the audio and the control automatically come together when those rooms are combined.
Yep, so it makes it nice and easy. An event scheduler and integrated stereo playback. So having audio on the actual unit itself that you can trigger with different events, or by a button push, or really anything, you know. And that audio can be anything. You know, think about like a college football stadium, for example. You could have, every time the score, have some kind of audio effect that goes for your team, like a team song or, you know, fight song or whatever, that you could have triggered off every time, you know, an event happens within the system, you know.
Yeah, we see a lot of these in press boxes for, you know, for any level, for stadiums and things like that. We've got a bunch of them where it's just, they have a kid in a press box and he'll run the audio with one volume control and two buttons. One runs the school fight song and one runs the national anthem, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's 2.5 gigs are built on board, and you can just load as many WAV files in as you need to get that accomplished.
Yeah. And again, with the event scheduler, you can actually, you know, set up exactly what it sounds like, something to happen at certain times, you know, and that something that happens can be a wide range of things. Basically anything the system can do, you can schedule that to happen at a certain time.
Yeah, church bells is a good example of where that gets used a lot. So.
Yep. The systems manager software is both Mac and Windows for all you people that all the Mac people that hate when something is only Windows, which happens quite a bit. So, so speaking of this, the management software, here's where we actually take a look at it and kind of see what it can do and go through some quick things. So, what I have done already is I have set up to have our system is connected here. So all I'm doing, just to kind of give you a run through of the hardware side of this, remember I was talking about having, in addition to LAN access, having WAN access. This is obviously a LAN network. I have a little switch here that I have my AHM plugged into, and I have my laptop plugged into that switch. So it can see it. When you jump on here, you're going to either find some detected units. You can connect via IP. You can also run this offline. So I encourage anybody to download this software. You can run one of these offline. You can actually build a show just like you would on offline editor for a mixing console or something. But you can build this out before you ever even go for the install, saving you a bunch of time. That's in general how everybody does it. They usually don't do this on the fly when they're there. You know, you build out your show, for lack of a better word, and then you can save it and upload it as a profile. Is that what it's called? I'm trying to remember. I keep saying show. It's stuck in my head. It's profile. Why can't I not get show out of my head?
Because you come from a production background.
I do. So anyway, you know, run firmware, all of that stuff. But download the software, play around with it. You'll see how easy it is to use. I'm going to connect to the unit that I have here. It's that simple, right? As long as you're in the same subnet, it's either going to see it or remember what you connected to last time. So you notice across the top you have tabs across the top, and within each one of those you're going to have different tabs that you can go into. So the first one you're looking at is a system tab, and this is where you go into here, log into your AHM. Next over is user libraries. If you have some libraries saved, that's where they're going to show up here. You can import libraries from your computer into the system and upload them there. You can export libraries for different things, like maybe you have input processing that you want to save as a library. This is what I want to use for a hanging choir mic, or just basically almost anything. You can save that and use that on multiple deployments. So if you think about, like, you do a bunch of gymatoriums for a school district, for example, you can save all that stuff as a library and then make tweaks to those things based on this gymatorium is this size and I'm adding these things. I need to drop a couple of these inputs in there, whereas the last one I did only had one, that kind of thing. So it's again a big time saver. Do you have something you want to say about libraries? Okay. And here you have your logs that are going to show everything of system manager, the connected unit, and I have it on combined. You can actually export the logs. So if you have any problems anywhere along the way, reaching out to support, you can send them their logs, and they can take a look at the logs. So it's just another layer of ways that to make your install go easier, and if there is any problem, you can send that over via email. Okay, next tab is configure. And you'll notice we have unit, controller, S-Link. If I had S-Link connected, which I don't, it's 16. I have a Dante card in here. I/O port, which is where my Dante card is, and I'm going to go through all this stuff: profiles and external control. First thing is the unit. This is where you're going to go and configure your unit, shockingly. If you want stereo inputs, just click here and select which ones. You'll notice I've got 11 and 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, but you can just pick and choose which ones you want to be stereo and which ones you want to be mono. As simple as possible. Zone configuration. Same thing. How many zones are you going to do? Obviously, I'm on a 16, so my maximum amount of zones is 16. As those scale up, you're going to have more and more zones that you can pick and choose from.
I think let me break in just for a second there. So, as he said earlier, one of the important things to note about how we do this with an FPGA versus doing this with a DSP means that the audio is always up and always on. So if you're making a program change, the audio doesn't go down. If you're using a DSP, you have to compile the software and then send it up, and you will lose audio for that. In many installations, that doesn't make a difference, but if you're doing a stadium and or a conference room and you want to throw an automatic mic mixer in, you will never lose audio with this system. These two tabs, zones configuration and the input stereos, are the only times when you would possibly lose audio, because it's actually reconfiguring the way the FPGA is processing audio. So just keep that in mind. Just like with our consoles, if you change a bus configuration or you change an input stereo, you might lose audio for a fraction of a second. Yeah. Other than that, the audio is always going to be up and always on.
But just like all Allen Heath products, it prioritizes that boot up. If for some reason you do that, where you make a change on the fly and you're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, or whatever, and you're in the middle of something, it prioritizes passing audio before everything else. So that's the first thing that's going to come up is it's going to start passing audio before anything else. So while it is a puckering moment if you do something like that, hopefully the audio comes up quickly. Okay, and this will show, based on how many zones you have, how many processing outputs you have available when we're in the zone configuration. Speaker processing, you don't have to use speaker processing on zones, but you can, and this is where you go in and say how many ways do you want a one-way speaker processing all the way up to 4. On each one of these. So like if I wanted to change this over to a two-way processing, now I can, right? I'm gonna leave these at 0 because I don't need them. So, but that's your zone configuration. Next thing, we have signal generators, and this is exactly what it sounds like. This is great for when you're doing your install and you want to check and make sure all your zones and all your speakers and everything are working properly. You can go into all these signal generators, and you have a bunch of different ones, right, that you can set up, and you can drop those into zones, into inputs, wherever you want them to be. You have 8 signal generators, and you can set them up differently. Like you can set one up as pink noise, one up as white noise. You can do band pass, whatever. Obviously, this is set up as a sine wave, so I can pick what the frequency is on that, mute and unmute. Okay, pretty straightforward, but really powerful for when you're doing your install on the fly. You know, is that zone working the way it's supposed to? Well, there's a quick and easy way to find out, right? Okay. Audio sync, this will just let you know you can sync to an external I/O port if you have a large Dante deployment, for example. Maybe you want to sync to your Dante card there, and you have something else set up for your clock. There's tons of different reasons you might do that from a video processing standpoint or something like that, but just know that it's you can sync to the I/O port as well, and it gives you a little check mark when you're synced, as I am there because I'm using internal. I spoke a little bit about chromatic metering. This is where you go in and set up. You can set it to defaults, which is the way I have it here. But obviously, you can change all your colors to be whatever colors you want for your chromatic metering, and go through and set where those levels happen. You can have fixed or have them set to be a variable on the intensity. I personally, there's a couple of things in here with the variable, so that's, correct me if I'm wrong on that. When you're doing the variable, that allows it to kind of fade in different ways as opposed to just being a fixed light. Is that correct?
I personally have not played with the difference between
I
fixed
think
and
that's what it is.
variable.
Fixed is it's a fixed intensity, whereas the variable is it gives you different intensities of that light and that color. That's my understanding. But if I'm wrong on that, I will correct my error. But that's my understanding.
We're going to have to make a call to outside for that.
There you go. Phone a friend. Okay, but this is where you set up that chromatic metering, right? Metering ballistics, this is going to set up when you're looking at your meters, not the chromatic metering, but your actual meters, how those ballistics are being displayed. You can poke around in here all you want. Very rarely do I see people do anything with this, but the good news is if you do mess around with this and you get kind of in a hole where you can't get out of it, you can restore to default, which is where pretty much everybody leaves it anyway, but you do have the option. Network is very important. This is where you can go in and set up either a fixed or DHCP enabled on here. All your information. Obviously, when you're setting this up on an existing network, they probably have an existing IP schema that they want you to use on a certain subnet, so you would go in here and set this up.
Yeah, a lot of the questions we always get with any integrated systems are going to be networking questions. Just for your information, just like a lot of the Allen Heath products, everything comes with a static IP address. You can look that up in the manual. Each one is kind of different, but it just helps you get stuff up and running a little bit faster than you would otherwise. The exception to that rule is going to be our custom control touch panels. Those come as DHCP enabled, and it's basically an Android tablet. You would have to go in and set those if you're in a static address. But the benefit of that is that if you have those touch panels all over a venue, it gives you the ability to have them in and plugged in and not fighting with each other instead of having to put them in one at a time. So just keep that in mind. Everything comes out of the box as a static IP other than the CC panels. Yeah. So.
And again, to Chris's point, that means that if nothing else, you can plug your computer directly into that AHM, put your computer on 192.168.1.something 20 or whatever, and you can ping that thing, and you can make your adjustments from there. So very, very easy to make sure that no matter what happens, you can get to it. Unit time, this is just where you're going to, set the time for the unit, pretty self-explanatory. Email notification. you can set this up to send you emails specifically when something is triggered, or more than likely, you're going to set this up that if some error pops up in the system or something specific happens, you can set it up to send you an email. And I'm not going to go through all the SMTP servers and your connections and all of that, but that's going to be something that hopefully you know how to do. And if you don't, there's videos. So YouTube is your friend. But yes, you can have it send emails specifically like, oh, hey, if the system reports an error on a zone or an input or speaker processing or something like that, or they're driving a channel too hard, you could have something, any kind of system error or system event, you can have it send you an email for that. Template config. You can go in and store a bunch of different templates. Obviously, I have a default template stored here that I could restore from. I don't have any templates set up, but you can do that on these systems and within your manager software, and you can, or within the hardware piece itself, and you can restore those back to some kind of factory setting or something that you set up.
Yeah, this is where if you did an offline, if you made your show configuration offline, you could store it on your local computer. This is where you're going to upload it, or this is where you're going to back up. Once you do the installation, you want to store your configuration off to somewhere that you can get at it in case there's a problem. Lightning strike, the processor is going to go down. You want to be able to store that somewhere else and send that up.
Yeah.
So,
and if after you're done, this is where you go and you save that config, right? And you can save it as whatever you want to, wherever you want. Obviously, I have a few on my computer. And restore config is the same thing. You can jump in there, and that's how I have the event space and bar configuration that is running on it right now. And you can unmute some delays on the mute and unmute, or set up. It adds a delay. It tells you right there. Adds a delay before the local output audio. So when you start it up, it can unmute the audio so you don't get a blast of audio right at startup, which can be bad for your system and your hearing and your the confidence that your that your client has. Okay, so that's unit configuration. We've got controllers here, a bunch of different controllers. For example, right up here, I have our IP1, which is a single gang wall plate that has a single touch and turn knob and a single scribble strip. It's powered over PoE, so you can mount that in the wall as a tactile control to do a bunch of different things, select sources, volume, that kind of thing, but a whole lot more, recall scenes, tons of things. So you can see when I go over here, you have all the different IP units available to you. You can see that I'm connected to one, and I can change the name and configure it on the network, all of that. But within the setup, and I'm going to go through real quick a couple of different things here, but with this one right here, you'll notice that when I push the knob in, I have it set up to zone select, and then when and then I'll have the main set up for something else. So there's a couple of different things I can do with this. What I will probably prefer to do is do, let's see, I could do I'll do the bar zone select on that one, and then I'll have this do zone level. So I can select, when I push in, that's going to select the source for the bar, and I'm going to do source selection for that zone, so all the different sources that I set up, and then the level for that. So it's going to be very easy for, if this is behind the bar, for the bartender to walk back there and push in and see all the different all the different sources. So that might be music or microphone or whatever, TV level, and then when they let go, it pulls out, and that's the main level, and I can turn the level up and down. Make sense? Very simple to set these things up. You have a function for each one, and then what that function does, right? And on volume, by the way, you can do audio taper, and you can have it show values if you want it to taper or not.
Yeah, audio taper, that we get a lot of questions on that. But if you turn audio taper off, basically you can put rails on the volume, so you can only give them -10 to 0 or something like that. Audio taper gives you the full -infinity to +10.
So you can see here I took audio taper off, and I can set a minimum of infinity, or actually set, like you said, guardrails, of how low and how high they can turn that up. Okay. Now, if you're looking at the IP6, which I'm going to have some slides about what these things actually look like later on. Probably should have done that before I started digging into this, but anyway, you can see a layout with a simulation of the 6 touch and turn knobs and 6 scribble strips available in multiple layers, up to 6 different layers. So you can go in here, and every one of these things can be a different function, every button, every knob, everything. So you can start setting up, really, I don't want to say complicated, but really interactive things where you can do a lot with a very small hardware piece. The IP8 is 8 motorized faders with up to 6 layers on there that you can do exactly the same thing. So think about the IP6 is 6 knobs, the IP8 is 8 motorized faders. So I have set up things with the IP8 for like a coffee house setup, for example, where they can, every once in a while, like on Friday night or Saturday night, they might have a little singer-songwriter on the stage. So having the ability to do, mixes with faders and things just built into the system. You just plug it in, set it up the way you want it, and go with it, right? So very easy, very quick way to do things. That's you also
Could you
have
go back to the IP1 quick?
Oh, yeah,
And then
yeah.
one of the powerful things about this is if you press the open simulation button, it'll actually emulate the controller that you're trying to do. So if you want to make sure that it's working in the way you expect it to, you can just click that for any one of them, and it'll give you a visual representation, and you can go in and click and turn things.
So that's me selecting the source. So I have my sources within this configuration are music, wired, and wireless microphones. So I can select, say I want to turn up the music, so I go to there, and then I grab the main and I turn it up and down. So very, very simple.
So that's a little screen on there.
Yeah, it's a little screen that pops up just in front of he's emulating this hardware piece right here. So that programming, but if you didn't have the hardware connected, if you're doing this beforehand, obviously you want to make sure that it works in the way that you're anticipating.
And of course you can do the same thing with, the IP6, IP8, and the GPIO. So we do have a 8 GPI and 8 GPO box that you can put on the network that gives you even more GPIO spots than the 2x2 that are built into the AHM system. So
Right.
you can control even more things.
You can add up to 8 of those per system, so you could have 66 ins and outs. So you could build your own robot with the thing if you needed to. You can build anything with enough relays.
Yeah. Relays are wonderful. So that's how you set up controllers within the system. Very easy, right? I/O port. That is as you saw in the pictures earlier, the I/O card slot that's on the back. This will tell you what card you've got in there. Internal network bridge. This just allows you to bridge the network through the I/O card itself, which can be very handy. It can also cause network problems in how you access your network. So, but it's exactly what it sounds like. You're bridging the internal network through the card.
Right. So if you were taking your control network and your Dante network and you wanted to connect to the system with one cable,
yes,
you could connect to the Dante card, and the AHM would receive control messages on that same network through the same network that you're using for Dante.
Which, depending on your installation, might be exactly what you want or absolutely not what you want. So, just be aware that's where you're going to do it. Profiles. This is where you set up user profiles. Now, there's a couple of different reasons why you want to have this. The biggest reason is, and obviously the amount of user profiles you have changes, as we talked about earlier, based on whether you have the 16, the 32, or the 64. I have a 16, so I have 4 user profiles here. Most of what you're going to use user profiles for are the ability to have different custom control layouts to have access to different things, right? So you're always going to have an admin that has access to pretty much everything, right, when you log into the system. And this, I say most of the time you're going to use that with custom control, but that could be somebody actually logging into the system, how much access you want to give them to be able to change things like cross-point routing and that kind of thing. You might want to give somebody a little bit of access to the management software, but not all access. So again, it's up to you on your install how you want to do it. But just know that you have different levels of use, and these also correspond to the logins for custom control apps, where you can have different layouts and different things that they see on their phone or iPad or CC touch panels. Cool.
You're doing okay. Yeah. A lot of that stuff, if you're trying to present what you want them to see, is going to primarily be done through custom control.
Yes.
But you might have, this is more for, if you have some techs or something that you want to give some access to, but not have access to change the network settings and things like that.
Right.
You would set them up in here.
Right. And external control. This is where you set the security for external control, but just know that there's lots of things, and as we go through the presentation, I'll show quite a few third-party things, Extron, that kind of thing that you can use to control this as well. This is, as Allen Heath is wont to do, and correctly, this is truly an IP-based protocol, right? So all of your normal networking, real networking protocols and ways that you set things up, it's exactly the same thing. So, when we start getting into external control, there's control strings for things. There's also, you can control external IP devices, via the system. As long as there's, control strings for that thing or IP addresses for that thing, you can control it because it's all on the network, right?
Yeah, this part's very rarely used, but if you're on a network that requires SSL certification to send control messages, this is where you'd set that
When you
up.
get into bigger corporate situations or government scenario, that's you're going to see that a lot more often. Okay, moving on to the Manage tab. You have presets that you can set up, and presets can do so many things, right? So you'll notice on bar demo that I have here, when I recall this preset, I put some notes in about what it does, but, wireless mic 1 on, wired on 2, music, what channels they're on, what zones, all this stuff. But, I mean, you can do all kinds of things with this. In addition to having some playback tracks, which we talked about a little bit earlier, and I'll go into a little bit more detail when we get to the playback tab. You have things like recall scope. So you can go in and set up these things to only recall certain things and not other things. So maybe you want to recall on one channel, have it only recall the processing on a specific channel when you do that recall. Then you can do that. Or you can have it recall everything within the system or anything in between, right? You just pick and choose what things you want to have happen based on your grid here, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes this part a little bit different, it's extremely flexible in how it's used, but if you've used our consoles before, we actually, when you recall a scene, everything in the console gets recalled with that scene, and then you can filter things out. So we have a recall filter on a console. With an AHM, it's completely opposite. When you recall a preset, it does nothing until you tell it to do something within this recall scope, because you don't want to necessarily maybe you made a programming change on a volume, and then you recall that, and it's something unexpected. So recalling a preset does nothing until you tell it what to do. Now, when you save a preset, it's saving everything within every parameter that's in the AHM. So you never lose anything that way, but you do have to allow the things that you want to happen through this screen.
And the reason that's important to remember is, obviously, if you don't set anything up and you recall a scene, you're like, well, that didn't do anything. But also, it's important to know that if you do, save a scene within there, and later on you think, oh, I also want this scene to also recall this thing, right? Well, you can just go back into that recall scope and add that in there, because it saves every parameter, it's in there, and you can have it recall that thing, right? So it's very handy on the backside to be able to go, oh, I only want it to recall these 2 things, and then while you're doing your programming, oh, I do need it to do that 3rd thing. We'll just open it up. It's already there, right? You can undo, recall, store presets, all of the normal things. You've got some IP control. So this is where I was talking about like some external control, third-party control that you might want to have a button on a touchpad, an Extron touchpad that recalls a scene within your AHM. This is where you would do it. You have IP control, hexadecimal and decimal control. And just your standard external control there.
Yeah.
So
you got TCP, UDP control. Put your strings in there.
Yeah.
Put a button on one of your control panels. Have it send a message to a PJ Link projector. Turn on, turn off.
Yeah.
That way, this gives you a lot of power within the system. Instead of adding that other third-party control system, you can start to talk to some of those devices directly from the audio system. So if your system is primarily audio-based, you still have the ability to go out and talk to some of those things without adding another, somebody else's touch panel, somebody else's control system.
Yeah, and as you get more, and this is something that's happened over the last few years, almost every commercial piece, be it a display, now it's even getting to the point of, speakers and, everything has an IP address. And if it has an IP address, in most cases, there's some control that you can do over that IP, or why would you have it, right? So being able to control anything that has control-based, IP-based control from within this means that in that custom control app that I'm going to show you, you can drop a button on there and turn it on and off, or have it do whatever things you want it to do, that are within its capabilities. So my TV at home, I can control with this, like it's crazy. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this.
Yeah, but note that it's in the preset screen. So you want to add those control parameters into a preset. Same thing with the track playback. You're going to start for a track playback is going to be a preset that you recall. So you need to set those up as presets and then trigger them through either a GPIO. It could be a button on a custom control string as well.
Yes.
But presets are your friend. There's 500 built in. So you've got plenty
so
of, plenty
hopefully
of
you're not going to run out of presets there for your install. Presets crossfades. This is exactly what it sounds like. Where do you want crossfades? Select what you want. Your crossfade times for inputs, zones, control groups, your cross points between inputs and zones, and your cross points from zone to zone. So. You think, oh, cool, crossfades. There's a lot of ability to crossfade things from within this system. So playback, this is where you're going to upload tracks. You can delete tracks, delete all tracks. This tells you how much space you have. Obviously, I have a song and some talking on here. You can make them mono on one side or the other, or stereo for the tracks. Okay, so just as a point of reference, these are mono tracks, so I'm going to leave those on one. This I can mono down one side, or I can actually play the stereo track. So very simple. Hopefully a few people know what that song is. So moving on. Events. This is where you can go in and add in different events that you want to happen, right? So
time-based events.
Yes, time-based events. Sorry. So here's the different events you can have. You can recall a preset. You can have playback a track, or you can have it automatically based on the time email you a log saying here's what all has happened during the day. So, a lot of what people will do with this is every day at a certain time. For example, in my bar scenario, maybe they open for lunch and do a light lunch, and then they do a dinner crowd, and then have a thing on Thursday night that's an 80s dance party or whatever. So every day you could have a preset set up where the music's on a certain channel at a lower level during the day. And then in the dinner, you might bump it up just a little bit more. And then on Thursdays only, at this time, you have it kick over to a different channel that is your serious everything 80s channel, and it's bumped up even more. You know, there's so many different things you can do with this. And once you set those up, they're just going to run in the background. So again, no interaction from you necessary. Okay. Here's your time, specific days, every day, kind of self-explanatory there. Okay. All right. So that's in Manage. Now we're going to get into the fun tab, the Channels tab. Channels are your inputs, your zones, your control groups, and of course, some direct outs, which is something you don't see on a lot of zone mixers, direct outs. So inputs is exactly what you think it is, right? Here's all, I'm on a 16 by 16, so I have 16 inputs. This is your processing from left to right. This is the order that you have it in, right? So where is that? What is the name of that input? Where is it coming from? Gate, insert A, parametric EQ, compression, insert B, the delay time on that input, what automatic mic mixing channel it's on, its level. You can mute from here, and I'm going to click on some of these things and show you, because you click on them and you get a nice pop-up, and then your cross-point rounding. So name, pretty self-explanatory. You can name it. You can add a color to it. The nice thing is, if you're naming a bunch of things, once you've got this pop-up, you can just cycle through each one of them and change the name, or grab the bar and bring it down, whatever. You also have you can store a library if you want to of names, so you can go through and store a bunch of names and just recall that channel library if you want to. Very quick, very easy way to not only name, but also save channel libraries. Okay. Next thing we're going to look at is, where is that input coming from? And again, you have the same options for going through each one of them. Is it coming from a local input? Is it coming from a playback source? I/O ports. I have a Dante card in here, so you know I could. This is showing that I have the 64 channel Dante card in there because 64 channels are lit up. But if I had an S-Link card in there, I could have 128 sources coming in here. You know, where is that coming from? And I can go in and do a signal generator directly on this input from here, okay? Or just unassign the thing in general. Very quick, very easy, and you've got metering showing there. You've got pad, flip the polarity, you can trim it, you can gain it up if it's an analog source. Okay?
What are you inserting in there?
Oh, when we get to the insert ports, I'll show you what you can do there. Gate, pretty self-explanatory, but if you're familiar with Allen Heath consoles, this is going to look exactly the same as a console. Something that you're going to see throughout this, you're going to see a lot of really powerful tools that in general you're going to or are very much a piece of a console. And you don't get that in a lot of even DSPs, right? You get a few small parameters that you can change, but you know, audio with Allen and Heath is a priority. So, you know, you want good tools for that audio.
Yeah, on the good tools bit, I will note that this has the 10-second histogram like we do have on our consoles, so you can see how the gates or compressors are performing over time. And then if you just X out of that, I just wanted to make a point, or 2 points about this. One is going to be, if you think about this, it's a console turned on its side. It's signal flow. Instead of top to bottom, now it's left to right. So if you've grown up in professional audio, this will feel really comfortable to you. But also, we were talking about remote and WAN access, and this view gives you a lot of performance indicators. You've got a lot of metering for parametric EQs, compressors, everything all in one scene. So if you need to log into something and really see what the system is doing, you can see it all in one view instead of going into blocks, double-clicking, and seeing how that one single block is performing. You get a lot of information on one screen.
Yeah.
So,
which, to your point, you know, the logging in from outside of the system, it's a very quick and efficient way to, if there is a problem, be able to see it right up front. Okay. Yeah. Also, while we're on the efficient tools thing, talking about the histogram, being able to key, but even more important in something like this to me is being able to filter based on frequency, right? So, you know, being able to filter out that low end AC hum or whatever out of that thing if you're gating something, not having that gate triggered by the AC kicking on and having it triggered by the actual thing you're trying to gate. You know, those kind of things are things you don't really find in DSP and audio processing very often. Inserts. This is exactly like a console. Do you want it to come from a local input? Do you want it to come from an I/O port, right? So, you know, there's a bunch of different things that a bunch of different ways you could do that. And, you know, obviously you have analog and consumer level things that you could even bring in here. So there's a bunch of different reasons why you might want to do this. You know, you have some kind of external processing that you want to put on there, be it digital. I mean, technically, if you really wanted to live life on the edge, you know, you could have Dante coming in from like a wave server or something, you know, and use those as insert points. Not on an install, not on my install, but I mean, like I said, if you want to live on the edge, have at it. But it just gives you the options, right? And you have two different insert points, one pre-parametric and compression and one post-parametric and compression. Speaking of, you know, there's a lot of parametric EQ that you have on a per channel basis, right? So you've got 8 bands of parametric EQ. You can go in and select whether those are constant Q, high shelf, low pass, high pass, notch filters, you know, whatever you need them to be. And remember, this is on the input. We're going to look at a lot of the same things on the outputs as well, or zones. It starts to feel like a console. That's why I keep saying outputs, because it has all these things available. Again, and you have libraries that you can save and recall, and you know, for your install. Compressors, you know, histogram, sidechain compression, you know, filtering, all these things from within the processing block on every input and every output. Second insert point, same as the first, just in a different place in your processing chain. Delay, you know, you should use milliseconds, but if you need to use meters or feet, you know, you obviously sound travels at a different speed based on temperature, so it gives you the temperature level there. But, you know, milliseconds makes sense. It's always constant. Time is constant. So that's why you can delay your inputs. So your inputs, if you need, like, you know, video is a very big source of needing to delay audio to video. So automatic mic mixing. We're going to get to a different spot where you actually do the automatic mic mixing, but you know, you can go in and do all that stuff from the processing block as well. Allen Heath is really good about, if there's a tool that you need in multiple places, they put it in multiple places so you don't have to go poking around looking for something, right? You see it there, you can access it from there. And this is where you would set up those settings for that automatic mic mixing if I had it put in here. You know, you can do number of open mics, or our very well-loved D-Classic, which is an algorithm that a lot of people are familiar with, which just simplifies the automatic mic mixing. Very, very, very well used. Follow fader, all the same things. And again, with that sidechain filter, so you can filter out things from kicking that mic on, like AC noise or maybe an overhead fan, or, you know, whatever it might be in the room.
And then just to reinforce here, you're on an AHM 16 that you're presenting on. So you have one automatic mic mixer.
Yes.
The 32 is going to have 4 different, and then the 64 is going to have 8 available.
Yes, yes. Good point. And then at the end of your processing block is where your fader is and your mute, just like on a console. So, and then post that is when you get into your cross-point routing. There are so many different ways that you can do cross-point routing within this system, whatever makes the most sense to you. And I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. But I do get phone calls from people that have done installs and they're doing them, you know, on site. And they're like, hey, there's no audio passing. I know I'm putting audio into this. What is going on? And 9 times out of 10, it's because there's a fader at the input and on the zone and in a couple of other places that they just, you know, somewhere along the line, because out of the box, obviously, all the faders are down, right? So I have them look in a couple of different places, and just, if it's something that's going to be wide open and you want to have the zone affect that, then, put it at 0. If, you're going to be affecting the input in your install and the zone's always wide open, hey, maybe the zone's at infinity, you need to put that at 0, whatever, anywhere in between. But that's one of the places that I get phone calls from is it's not passing audio. Why is it not passing audio? Do you have all your faders up? It seems simple, but because there's so many different places you can affect on purpose, obviously, you just need to be able to look through all these things.
But it's fairly graphic.
I mean, yeah. You can see the fader pretty easily. And that's the thing. If you look across here, like if I take this down, I mean, you can see it. It's smaller, obviously, on that processing channel, but you can readily see where things are, and you have, numbers telling you what they are, right?
Again, a good place to throw a signal generator on your input to track it through track it through the signal chain.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. At the end of the inputs, cross-point routing. You can edit your routing, what cross-points you want that input to go to. Obviously, on this particular one, I have it going to some different zones, bar, entrance, and patio. But I can go in from here and select whatever zones I want. I have 4 zones in this particular install that I'm using, bar, main, entrance, and patio. And I only have this wireless microphone set up to go to these, but I can just pick and choose whatever ones I want from here. I hit OK. Now they're all there. And remember when I said there's a lot of places where you could have faders, right? You'll see here that I added those in there. The bar I have set to 0. So if you're expecting on zone 5 to be hearing this because you've got a signal generator patched in there and you're checking your zones, you're looking here, that level is turned up on that input channel. Well, is it turned up on the routing? Because obviously it is not. Okay? Make sense to everybody? Good deal. Okay. So that is your input processing. And you can see all of the inputs that I have set up here, some stereos and that kind of thing. But they all have the same processing on there. Next tab is going to be zones, the thing I keep calling outputs because I'm a console guy. Obviously, same kind of thing. Here's your signal flow through here. Name, I'm not going to go through because we already did that on the inputs. Selector. This is where I was setting up the IP1 and I was doing source selection and picking which zone. This is where you can go in here and set up your different sources. If I wanted to add sources to that selector, I can go in and just say, hey, I want to add these different inputs to that source selection, right? I can do all. I can also add control groups, which we'll go through here in a minute. But that's how simple it is to set up source selection for output zones. Pick which sources.
Yep, I want to make a point here. You're going to get to it, but the cross-point routing and the selector work in tandem. Mm-hmm. So you'll see up there that we've got the selector. This tells you what it can select, and then the cross-point routing is going to give you control over the volume of each one of those. So, somebody's voice might sound different or be too loud in one room versus another. You have a lot of control over that, but you need to use those two in tandem to make sure that you get audio through.
Right. Right. And you can change the color of those things and even rename them for that source selection, because you might have an input named, wired microphone, but within the room you might want it to be Bob, because Bob's always on the wired microphone, and that's how the people in that room know it's Bob's voice, So being able to have those things independent, right? We talked a little bit about priority, but this way you can set up your priority source, so it'll duck down if you set it to duck that priority source. This is where you pick what that source is. You can set all this stuff, pick which one you want, or multiples if you want to, and then you go in and configure how much you want the signal that's present to duck down and how, and the length of time it stays on, stays ducked. Note these settings apply to all uses of this input as a priority input. So once you set this up, when you start putting zones for setting this input as a priority for those zones, these settings are going to set across the board. Okay? Pretty straightforward.
Generally used for paging inputs.
General, yes. Or you might have a specific thing triggered for emergencies or that kind of thing.
Generally used for what inputs?
Paging. So if you need a phone page or somebody's got a microphone that they want to do an all call to the area, then when that audio comes in, it'll automatically duck any program audio, and that block that he just showed gives you the difference between how far the program audio ducks to allow that page audio to come through.
Yes. I was trying to think of a different use case, a clever use case of that, but I just keep coming up with like restaurants and that kind of thing. So, but yeah,
it's
table
real
5,
common.
your order is ready. I mean, there you go.
Stages, era.
I guess, yeah, you could automate all that. Cross-point routing. This shows, remember on inputs, we showed which zones it's coming from. On zones, this shows what inputs are coming from. So it's basically the same thing shown in a different spot, right? And this shows it in the signal flow where those things are getting injected in, okay? So everything past this, your insert parametric EQ, that's all post those inputs coming into that zone, okay?
I think so at this point, I think if you go back to the selector, hold on just one second. So you'll see that so if you select a different input there.
Like that?
Yep. Yeah, you should see the cross-point routing change.
Oh. So yeah, if I go in here and add a source, like if I say I want the center to be on there now. I can edit my routing and add in the center into that, and then that will give me, the selector will actually add that. That's a cross-point routing, and now I have volume control over that.
Right. You'll see that the selector is actually, if you close that, you'll see that the selector is selected to music, and then the music is at 0 dB, and the other two are down to 0. So that's how that selector is working. It's changing the volume level of each one individually.
Yeah.
So by zone, as I mentioned, if for some reason that music doesn't come through like it does in the other zones, you have individual zone control over each one.
Yes.
I'm hoping that makes sense.
Yeah, and you can see that from within the, when you get to your cross-point routing, you can see you have your spots where you can mute and where you can pull up. And that's important in trying to figure out, how you want that audio to sound going to that zone as well, right? And that placement in there and where you're muting it and all that. Because you can mute, obviously, in many different places. How do you want that muted out? And there's metering there too. So again, to your point about the wide area network, looking at this tells you everything in one quick and easy way of what's going on with your zone, right? Inserts, already talked about that, but this is a place where you can insert it on a zone. There is parametric EQ with all the same functions as the input, as far as having 8 different bands, being able to change whatever those bands are. Notch filtering, very handy to have on a zone. You also, in addition to that parametric EQ, you also have a graphic or another 8-band parametric EQ. So again, you don't have to use these tools, but that gives you a total of 16 bands of parametric EQ on every zone.
But wait, there's more.
Yes. So that's a lot of notch filtering if you need it, right? So there's a lot going on there. And when you look at the graphic, you have an RTA here across the top with some peaking across those constant this constant Q graphic. Okay. Moving on, you do have.
The signal, the tones and everything can send through this too.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sending an input, if you're doing signal generator on an input and you're sending it to this zone, you'll see it coming through here. Yep. So, okay, moving on. Compressor, again, same as the one that you have on the input. You can just compress the zone as well. And because it's post all that cross-point routing, it's going to compress everything coming in here. You're going to be EQing everything post that. That's why it's important to understand your signal flow, right? All the same controls. You have out zone delay. I gotta stop calling it output. You have zone delay. Again, that can be very handy for videos, or if you have somebody talking in the room where you need to sync things up with video, or for whatever reason. This is your ambient noise cancellation. Compensation. Sorry. This is where you're going to go and set up. As Chris said earlier, maybe you have a gymatorium where there's a lot of noise, and that can ride over the top of it. So what channel, what's your threshold? You can see your metering points in here, and what kind of gain differential do you want to have? How much do you want it to gain up or gain down based on the ambient noise in the room? Okay, it's pretty straightforward once you start looking at it. And then, of course, your level. And again...
Actually, go back to that
okay.
once. I just wanted to point out two things. One is that we use what's called gap metering. So if you've got program audio coming in, obviously you want to make sure that you're accounting for that, and that doesn't become part of the dynamic audio that you're looking at to change the volume level. So gap metering looks for gaps in the program material and takes measurements between those. So that's a lot of what's going on. But... now's a good time to point out in the lower right-hand corner, there's a question mark. And if you click on that question mark, it's going to tell you everything about the module. And that works in any part of AHM. And so if you get confused or you need to know what those things or how we're explaining it, you can go in, just press that help file. It'll be very useful for you.
Yes. And to that point, everything about this is... this is the complete, help file basically for everything. So if you're on a tab and you don't know, hit the question mark. Or if you are in this and you're like, oh, well, I also want to look at something else while I'm in here. Here's all of your stuff. Everything that you can do with this thing, there is a basic instruction on what it does.
How did you get from this to ANC to that next screen?
Hit the question mark. And then I can either look at the ANC information, or I can hit contents, and that's the full table of contents for everything. So if I wanted to look from here, look at what IP controllers are, I can just click on that and jump to there. So you can get to, again, anything from anywhere you might need it. It's the Allen Heath way. Level, again, here's your level control and mute, and a metering point. If we had speaker processing set up here, this is where it would be. You have a bunch of different things you can look at, but when you're looking at, let's say we have a three-way box on the end of this, right? So each individual way has different filters. You can have different kinds of slopes, everything from Butterworth, left, right, first orders, all of those things. And you have parametric or graphic EQ, delay, level, and limiting on each one of those ways. So when you want to do speaker processing, there's a lot to do here, and obviously you can just grab and change where those crossover points are, right, from within the system. So
at this point, you've basically, for that zone, you have 40 parametric EQs.
Yeah, true. I wasn't really thinking about using the individual speaker processing parametric EQs, but yes, that is also a thing that you can do. So yeah, like I said, everything from 1 to 4-way. I see a lot of 1-way in this, being able to set the high and low, and being able to have all of this on each individual, and in that way, yes. If you use a 1-way in there, then you do get even more parametric and or graphic if you would like. So yeah, that's way too much processing on a zone there. So just
Somebody's gonna use that all.
yes, someone is going to use it, and I have seen it in designs. But again, my opinion is that is way too much processing. Okay, so final chain, final at the end of your zone. Where is that going? Is it going out a local output? Is it going out an I/O port? Same as your inputs, same kind of situation. But you do have a limiter on that as well, so you can go in and limit that output and make sure that you're not, beating the crap out of whatever 70-volt system or whatever thing you're pushing it out of. And you also have a histogram on there so you can see how it's working before you turn it on or off. So, okay. So that is zones. Now let's talk about control groups. What are control groups? Well, let's set up a control group and see what it does. First of all, you can name your control group whatever you want to call it. You can change the color of it, just like anything on Allen Heath. Gives you a lot of visual ways of looking at things. So control groups are obviously, the way that I like to think about them is kind of like a DCA in a lot of ways, where you're taking some inputs and you're taking some zones and you're putting one fader there to control all of those things. So let's take a look at the inputs. What inputs do I want to put in this control group? Well, maybe I want my 2 microphones, right, to be in here. So I could call that group mics, and I'm going to make it green, right? So there I have a control group to control those. And then where do I want those things to go? Well, I want one fader to control it going to the patio. Both of those microphones going to the patio, okay? And it says for cross-point assignment, use the assign tab, which, obviously I've already done here. So now I've set up a control group where I have one fader controlling the microphones going to the patio zone. We can obviously set up multiple zones there. The reason you might want to do that is for just ease of use, right? Specifically for my use case, I'm sure you have a couple other use cases that are good use cases for this, but when I'm building out custom control apps, being able to give them one knob or one fader that controls a bunch of things is really, really handy. It just simplifies your user experience, being able to have one thing controlling multiple things, potentially going to even multiple zones.
Choir mics is a good example. You might have different gain settings, different compressor and limiter settings for each one. And if you do those individually before putting them into a summed group, this gives you control over all of those levels and still get individual processing. So you just get a better audio over the time. DCA is a good example of what it's doing because it gives you a control over several faders instead of summing the audio.
Yeah. So, leave it to Allen Heath to give you, DCAs on a matrix mixer. Okay, so input direct outs.
Don't ask me. I don't have a good use for this. I'm going to get yelled at.
This is an interesting thing. I'm sure somebody is using this in some way, but it's exactly like a console, right? So you have direct outs, so you can pick the point on those inputs that you have a pickoff point for, everything from immediately post preamp all the way to after the delay. So at any point within the processing, you can pick that off and send that directly out. And that's going to be globally, wherever you set that pickoff point for all of these. But you have another way of doing that, having that direct output going to somewhere else.
Yeah, I think how I would think to use this is obviously this isn't going to use processing channels. So if you had stuff coming in off of Dante, for example, you can take those Dante channels and give them an output in a rack and pull them down for analog audio. So basically a converter.
Right, and you can have it follow different things, right? Do you want it to be follow the fader or the mute or not? You know, if you mute the thing, do you want it on the direct out source to mute as well or not? Do you want when they pull that fader up and down? Do you want that to affect the direct output or not? So, but yeah, there you go, direct outs. Last tab is the assign.
It's my favorite tab.
Yeah, it is. It is. Shockingly, this is where you assign things. So you have a patch bay where you can just go in and patch things input to output just like on a console. We've already done a lot of this stuff in the channels page. This is just another way to look at it. If you prefer editing on the grid as opposed to being able to go in and have those pop-ups, pick and choose what you want to, here's a quick and easy way to do it.
Yeah, I think cross points is the good screen for me, because that gives you a visual representation of where every input's going to every zone.
Yes.
And you can control them from there as well. So if you right click on any one of those, you get the option to right click. Okay.
On what?
So on any one of those squares, you should be able to set it to 0. You have the ability to see what the fader levels is as well if you click that little blue button in the upper right.
In the upper right, show fader mute.
Yeah, there you go. So here you can see what's muted. You can see the relative fader level. So the white ones near the top are in zones 3 and 4. Those are at 0 dB. And then, yeah, you can right-click them there and mute them if you wanted to as well.
Nice and simple. I'm on a laptop, so apparently...
Your right-click is not working for you.
Apparently 2 fingers is not right-click within here. So, but just FYI. Okay, and you can also look at your zone to zone. So you can do cross-point routing from zone to zone as well as input to zone. So you can see all of that stuff in one place. Very easy to visualize what's going on, right? Okay. Again, your control groups, right? So remember, I did the mics and just put these 2 in here. It's the same thing. It's just a visually different way to do it. And you know, this could be, especially on larger, you know, looking at the when you've got 64 by 64, you know, you might not want to go individually through each one of those. It'd be much easier to just shift, you know, drag across here like that, right? So that might be the much easier way to make that happen. Or, you know, you might just be faster that way. It's up to you, whatever works best for you. Okay. Again, inputs, zones, cross points, all that business. Room combiner. Here's where you can go and set up your room configuration, as I was talking about, where you can go in and set up different zones and set up your configuration for all of this. So assign your zones. I want room 1 to be, you know, we're going to pretend on this because I have a different setup for this, but we'll say room 1 is the bar. Okay, and then we can have room 2 set up as, let's see here, main, just for the sake of argument, right? Move that into the center. And then that's your room configurator. And I can drag, I have these separated here. So party walls is 1 plus 2. So now you can see I'm flipping in between, you know, room 1 and room 2, or that being a full room. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Pretty
You can just
self-explanatory. I mean,
yeah, and on the other screen you can graphically draw it out as well.
Yeah.
And that'll come into your custom control editor as a room combine. So if you wanted to have the room combiner from a touch panel and just have them have the ability to combine and decombine rooms from a touch panel. In this case, you assign a room. So in this case, think about a conference center where they might have 4 different rooms, and they've got air walls between them. Each one of those rooms will be set up as a different zone for your output. But what you're doing with the room combiner is you're combining the control parameters and the audio parameters together. So So let's say room 1 is zone 1 and room 2 is zone 2. When they become combined, then all of the control data defaults to what room 1 is, and they track together. So zone 1 and zone 2, everything that happens in zone 1 happens in zone 2, and everything that happens in zone 2 happens in zone 1 until they're separated again. So,
Yeah, so I use the example all the time of the hotel ballroom because they're always like there's a big ballroom and you might have 3 different air walls, so that's 3 rooms, but you might have to combine those in different ways. So being able to have those things where no matter which air wall is open or how big the space is, it's one room, and for the system to be able to see it that way for processing, so makes it very, very simple, right? And then monitoring with an RTA. So very, very simple to be able to see any of your. This is all your monitoring, right? And your level, and you can mute from here as well. So pretty self-explanatory there. So that is the system manager software. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy to tell what's going on, but very powerful in what you can do. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint, and we'll run through a couple of other things.
do you want to stop? Anybody have any questions on any of that stuff before we move on?
Before we move on, do we have some questions online?
Yes, someone asked earlier, can an external word clock be used with the AHM?
Well,
There's no BNC word clock input on it.
you can change the clock source. So if you do have an external clock coming in, you could bring that in from, again, say you have your Dante network externally clocked somehow with any piece that you're clocking Dante from. You can change the clock source for the AHM to be that Dante card, and then it will pick up its clock from whatever the clock source is for that digital audio. So yes, but there's no BNC connector to directly connect a clock to it.
Correct.
Yeah. That's
hopefully that was what they were asking.
yes. Anything else online? Any other questions?
Nothing at the moment.
Okay.
I just want to be aware of what things capable of. Most of this kind of stuff that I do is all like 70-volt systems. And, so I'm thinking about that crossover. Where would that fit in? Give me an example of, I have installed any 3-way speakers in a situation like that.
Well, yeah, in a situation like that, you probably wouldn't use that.
Right. What's a good use for it?
Well, like I made the comment earlier that I have touring guys that have that set up in their racks, and so when they show up, they can change, whatever, that output having 3-way crossover or 4-way or whatever, in whatever situation you want. You could have a performance center, a performing arts center, where you have multiple. You have speakers where you want that 3-way or 4-way or 2-way processing. Whatever. They're not gonna. It's not gonna apply really to 70-volt systems, but low impedance systems, you could definitely have that. So it's an option. It's not something you have to use. It's something that's there if you need it. So it's a tool. Any other questions in the room?
Yeah, you said earlier that you could manage this over WAN, right? Is that inherently part of the system? Or
Well, you would obviously have to have a way into their system, right? So some form of, a port being open into their system that they give you access to.
Yeah, that's in the manual. You would essentially port forward. It works on a specific port. You port forward the address, the IP address for the AHM processor through their firewall.
Yeah.
And so at that point, what you would need to do is really just get to the IP address, their external IP address, and you would be able to connect.
Yeah, and a lot of installations, integrators who do service as part of their 24-hour service or service plan, a monthly service fee plan kind of thing. They'll have set up a screen mirroring system for a computer that's internal on the network, that's a secure connection for them, like some kind of Cloudflare tunnel or something, so everybody feels very comfortable about them being able to log into their system. And that computer is sitting on the network and has all the programs necessary for whatever their installation has done. So that way, no matter where you are, you can log in to that computer doing some kind of screen sharing, and you're operating that computer that's on their network running all of their systems, the AHM management software being one that you could have on there.
Yeah, but you can connect directly without having
Yes,
another computer.
yes, absolutely,
But
absolutely.
through a port forward.
Yeah, so,
Yes, sir?
yes.
The histogram, how does that present itself and what's the best way to utilize that?
Well, it's a good way. It shows you what's happening with either the gate or the compressor in real time. Like for a gate, for example, it's showing it open and closing, and the attack and release time. You'll see those happening in real time, whether it's on or off. So you can set all your parameters while it's happening with it off, and then just click it on, and you're ready to go. Right, so it's just a visual representation of what that compressor or that gate are doing. That way, you're not having to do. I always liken it to any kind of thing you're doing in real time. You don't want the end user to hear you messing with those things in real time. So it's a visual representation that allows you to dial it in without, it coming through the speakers at full volume and gating and all that.
Yeah, but it's not a record of what's been happening.
I mean, it is.
It is 10 seconds
It's
of a
10
record.
seconds of what's happening.
So as opposed to normally on a gate or a compressor, before the histogram was available, you just have a light telling you when it was open or
So
closed.
it's not really a time signature of operation,
It's 10 seconds.
just 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's 10 seconds of what's happened, the last 10 seconds of what's going on. So,
Can the faders be set up so that the upper value can be set to 0 as not to let the end user to add gain?
yes.
So both in System Manager and Custom Controller, you have the ability to have, as we talked about a little bit before, but we'll reiterate it, just talking about putting guide rails on. And essentially there's a button that says Audio Taper, and when you click that off, it'll give you the ability to set a maximum and a minimum value for each fader.
Yeah.
And you can do that either in Custom Control or through System Manager.
And we're going to go through some custom control stuff as we get through here, and I'll pull up the software. And again, custom control, there's the custom control setup, which I'm going to show how you set up that custom control layout. And then there's the app, which is available for PC, Mac, Android, iPhone, iPad, Android tablet. It's agnostic of whatever thing you have. You can put it on there, and that's what you're actually interacting with, is the actual app itself. So, but I'll go through that here in a bit. Okay, so we talked a little bit when we were going through about the automatic echo cancellation module. That's an optional module for the AHM 32 and the AHM 64. This kind of shows you real quick like what that is. And if you're unfamiliar in conferencing, when you're doing video conferencing, this is canceling out that annoying echo that you get when somebody is listening and talking to the same reference material, right? So the way automatic echo cancellation works is, there's a reference within the room that the system sees and hears what's going on in the room and pulls it out, cancels that out so you don't get that echo on either side. Okay, at its base level, that's what it is. So you get on the 32 and the 64, it's an optional module that you can drop in. This gives you kind of the signal flow of how everything I just said works. But at the end of the day, it cancels out the cancellation for video conferencing. It cancels out the
cancellation.
Yes, the echo.
It removes the near end audio from the far end.
Yep.
So the important points on this, and we don't need to go into this really too deep. There's a lot of great conferencing boxes on the market. This gives you the ability to take something that you're using already for audio processing and add the ability for that conferencing to be in. So if you're doing a conference room or a performing arts center and you need to bring in an outside audio, a Teams call or a Skype call or something like that, you can bring that in and make that work. The other thing I do want to point out is that these are modules that go in the top of the boxes. These don't take up the card slot in the back.
Yes.
So you still have the card. If you opt for the AEC, you still have the option to put in Dante or an S-Link card or something
Yes.
like that.
Got a question?
In courtroom scenarios where they're doing Zoom witnesses and things like that, a lot of times when they bring in another witness, a lot of echo, is this for that
Yep.
kind of thing?
Yep. That would.
And how would you do that? You just,
Yeah, you would create, so if you were using this in a courtroom scenario or something like that, a lot of those have, like, Teams or Skype are going to have their own codec, but it's not generally it's generally built for being in front of a computer in this amount of space. When you put it in a larger room, you need more hardware to account for the longer tail length on that audio. So in that case, you would have some sort of digital I/O, maybe a USB I/O, take the audio in, run it through the AEC, and then come back out to go to back to the far end.
And it's basically the same thing you do with any conference room, right? You're taking that audio digitally into the system and then sending it back out. So, yeah, and takes away that delay. So, okay, so there's the screen that basically is the setup screen for that, and that way you can tell it, any of your filter and your tail length and all that stuff. So it's pretty straightforward and very easy to set up. Okay, so this is kind of a quick breakdown. We're going to go through this fairly quickly. There is, I had mentioned, with the S-Link port on the built into the 64 or as a card for the 32 or 16 even. This allows you to get into the everything I/O from Allen Heath. So you can connect to consoles directly from that, everything from QU to DLive. You also have all the I/O boxes that Allen and Heath makes for their consoles. That S-Link card allows you to connect to any of those. So you have wall boxes. You have the new DX88P, which is a half rack space, 8 in, 8 out box that you can just drop in a rack. It's got Phoenix connectors on the back. So you need some I/O somewhere. It's a half rack space. You can put it in a credenza if you need to. There's so many different applications for that. Drop boxes, just basically anything that you need to do, any kind of I/O. If you have a socket you need to put somewhere, there's a way to get it in there. That's the 88P that I was talking about. You can see the back there. You can also cascade those. So you see on that bottom picture, that's a 16 by 16 I/O box in a single rack space. So nice, simple, easy way. Looks great on an install. DLive mic pre's, by the way. So you can scale this out as well you see there, I believe that's a 32. Yes, it's 32 with an S-Link card in it. And you can see they've put a DX hub on there, and you're dropping some stage boxes and some wall boxes. In the lower picture, with a 64, that's a lot of I/O that you can put all around your building. Very easily, very quickly. No setup because it's Allen Heath. It all is plug and play for the most part, like any networked audio. I said for the most part.
We'll come
like
back to
any,
that.
Yeah, like any networked audio. You also have the QU D-Snake boxes that you can use on that S-Link port because it reads everything. DX expanders. There's the wall box, which is something that gets used quite a bit with the AHM, which is a 16 by 4 out. You can mount it in a wall box, put it in like a choir room or something like that. Very, very simple. There's the new expander that's a 12 out, 0 inputs, 12 out, single rack space. You can also use AES outputs on that. So lots of options, even all the way up to the 32 expander, where you can pick and choose what inputs, what do you want, inputs or outputs. You have 4 slots to put that in there. Just remember the DX protocol. And we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between DX and Dante in a second. But remember, the DX protocol is a 32 by 32 protocol. So you're never going to be able to send down a line any more than 32 inputs or 32 outputs. Okay. There's even prime cards for that expander, which are amazing. I'm not going to go into a bunch of details, but those cards are ridiculous. They sound really good. There's a GX 4816 expanders that you can drop on that S-Link port, which gives you 48 by 16 and the ability to hang some DX boxes off of it even, if you wanted to. So lots of inputs coming into this thing and lots of outputs for zones. DX hub, plug it in there, and that gives you 4 DX ports or 2 redundant ports if you want to go that route, but usually 4 DX ports, so that's 4 times 32. Obviously, 128 channels you can have hanging off of that. There's because there's a Dante card, Allen Heath has a lot of products that you can use with Dante, and you have a wall box, which is the DT. That's the differentiator. Remember, DX is the Allen Heath protocol. That's 32 by 32. If you see DT in the name, that's a Dante piece. And all the same, the regular Dante things that you would use, Dante controller, all of that, that's all how you would route most of these things, on your network. So they're 4896K on the wall box, as well as the stage box and all the access points that you have. So you have a couple of boxes that you've got 0 inputs, 2 outputs, 2 inputs, 0 outputs, or the DT22, which is on Phoenix connectors, and that's a 2 in, 2 out box. So you can just kind of spread those around wherever you need to and have access to the system through there. There's also either a dual or single rack mount kit if you so choose. You want to go that route. Okay. If you have a system where you need to use these Dante boxes, all the boxes I just showed, the wall box or the drop box or whatever, and you don't have an Allen Heath card to control the head amp gain from, or some Allen Heath system, there's even a preamp control for PC or Mac that you can run on your system, where you can actually go in and set gains, and you can see from the picture there, you've got gain pad, phantom power, so you can drop Allen Heath quality preamps into basically any system. Okay, so play well with others, right? I promised we would do this. What's the difference between DT and DX? DT, obviously, as I said, is Dante. Is just standard Dante protocols, the same protocols everybody's used to. Fully networkable, so you can send that out on your Dante network, put it anywhere, go campus wide with it if you want to. You control the network, record and playback from any device in the building, that kind of thing. Patching, settings stay with that Dante receiver. DX is plug and play, no network setup. You literally plug it in. Firmware versions all port out depending on what you've got. There's no firmware mismatch problems. That's that automatic firmware matching. Patching and settings stay in the processor, so it's easier to put a drop-in replacement in there, right? You've got a wall box in there, and for whatever reason, the install, you decide you need to go to a drop box for some reason. You can just drop it in there. It's it's all the system, all the patching and routing is all stays within the system. Hopefully that all makes sense. Anything you want to add to that?
I would say that it's pretty common for us to see people using both Dante and DX in any system. So when I think of Dante, since it's a layer 3 network protocol, it's easy to pick up and put down small pieces of audio anywhere on a network. DX is more of a point-to-point, but you don't have to pull out a controller. There's no laptop associated with getting it set up. It's very stable. So if you want audio to just basically plug in and go, that's DX. If you need to pick it up and put it all over the place, that's Dante. And there's reasons to use both of them.
And
so
as
we
you
can
said,
do 128 channels in 5 samples on DX protocol, on GX protocol, but on DX you got 32. So
yeah. So you can use both. There's nothing stopping you from using both if you need to, based on your install. Okay, so I promised to talk a little bit about control. So we went through the IP1 controller. I showed you. I promised I'd show you a picture of that. This just gives you a quick rundown on what it looks like. It's available in black or white. It's TCP, IP, and PoE compliant. So it basically, you just throw it on the network, put it in a wall box. Up to 8 on an AHM 16, 16 on a 32, and 64 on a 64. So you can do a lot of rooms on an AHM 64. Drop those in a lot of different places. The IP6 controller that I talked about, this is a picture of that. This allows you to have 6 touch and turn knobs and up to 6 different layers, 2, 8, and 16, depending on the size of the AHM.
Yeah, like theater directors and things like that. If you have something on a wall that they can just go grab a knob, it's a lot easier than them having to pull open an iPad or something like
Yeah.
that. So we see a lot of those being used for that.
Yep.
And again, with the 8 motorized fader as well, just giving
Yeah.
them some tactile control.
Yeah, and
instead
there's
of
the
having some
IP8.
glass.
Same deal. So there's the GPIO module I discussed a little bit about. Just giving you some more GPIO wherever you need it. You just put it on the network. So third-party control, AMX, Extron, Crestron, that's all there.
There's a bunch more now.
There is a bunch more. So just go on the website, all those control strings and all the information. If you do need to interface with a third party, just go onto the website. It's a very easy way to find it, allen-heath.com. All the information's there. Talking about third-party control, that IP external control, ASCII, hexadecimal, decimal. You've got IP controllers, the custom control that I'm about to show real quick. And think about it for this: TV control, projectors, video switchers, light panels. I mean, all those things nowadays you can do via IP control. So that means that you can run that through the AHM and control those things. Custom control, the last bit of this piece. Thanks everybody for sticking around, by the way. This is a lot of information. So there's custom control editor and the custom control app. The editor is obviously how you set up the interface for the custom control app. The app is the thing that you put on, it comes preloaded on Allen Heath's touchscreens. You can download it for your iPad. I have an Android phone, which is very well known for nothing working on. It's very nice that I can set up custom controls for my phone, but it's all there. It's agnostic, right? Everything that, pretty much everything that has a touchscreen, you can put that on there and it can do some control with that based on how you set it up. There are custom control panels. There's a 7-inch, which I have here, and a 10-inch. They can be PoE or you can run them on 12-volt DC. A single gigabit Ethernet port. There's a USB-A port, so you can update it. You can do VESA mounting. I have the little desktop stand here that it's setting on, which you can adjust. And after we get done here, if you guys want to poke around on this stuff, you're more than welcome to. That's why I brought it. Here's a couple of examples of custom control layouts that were done not by me, by somebody who is way better at graphic design than I am. But you can see how simple it is, right? You can do everything from something as simple as a few buttons and select your source with the background, picture of whatever you want it to be. You can see over here, there's one of those room combiners in the upper right-hand corner, main hall, and they're combining those, and there's some spill overflow, and you can select those rooms. There's some source selections there, and muting and turning the TV audio on. Projector turning on and off, lobby from there, a bunch of different, there's just a ton of different things you can do. I'm going to show real quick the software, but yeah, this gives you a good idea of kind of what can be done. But real quickly, I will show you what the software looks like and how easy it is to use. So actually, let me just start this up real quick so you can see it from the beginning. So here's your first screen. You can create a single unit configuration or a multiple unit configuration. This is based on, maybe you have a configuration you want to use for a 16, a 32, and a 64, or any, groups of those things, or just a single unit. You just have one 32 that you're putting into the restaurant with the patio area. I'm going to create that for a single unit. I can pull this pull a configuration from a drive on my computer. So if I click on this, I can go through. I have several configurations here that I have that I can pull up. And I can also download from a unit that I'm connected directly to, so I can make edits or change something up or copy it and just make some changes from there. But I'm going to go ahead and load up the demo that I have running on here. So the first thing you're going to see is units, right? Like I'm in single unit mode, you can see here. So I'm just designing for the AHM 16 here. I could pick a 32, 64. This program also runs with Avantis and DLive, so I can select those things for any kind of custom control I want to do. But I'm on the 16, I've already selected that. So now I'm going to go out to my layout manager here across the top. I click on that. These are where you start your layouts. So you can see I have a couple of layouts here already. This one for the Vox Theater you can see everything you need in here. You can click on your details, and this is where you're going to edit your details. The name of it is, what do you want to call that layout section? And the next thing is users. Remember when I was showing those user profiles? This is where you would assign that layout specifically to those user profiles. I can have it pop up for everybody or a specific person. In this use case, I have two layouts. One that's for the event manager to be able to control everything, and then one for the bartender so he can pull out his phone, select a source for the bar audio and volume up and down. And you can see those two here. But this is where I specifically do it. I can decide what devices I want it to be available for, phone, tablet, or desktop apps. Do I want it to be able to be used in any way, or portrait or landscape only? And I can have it have only certain scenes available to it. I don't have any scenes set up in here, but you can even change the aspect ratio, right? So I have two scenes here. Let's drill down into one of these, and I can select the scene or double click on it. Across the top is where you can delete, cut scenes, or cut layouts. You can copy layouts. You can do new ones. You can redo. So you can delete your layouts and you can build new layouts, right? Just click on any one of these buttons and it'll give you, that same layout configuration, and you start with a new one. But I'm going to take one that I've already done here for the sake of speed and go to the layout editor. This is the bread and butter of the thing, right? So your toolbox over here on the side is where you will drag and drop the individual things that you want to do, right? Labels. This is a tab container across the top. You can see I have a bunch of different tabs. I've done the same background on each one of the tabs, but I've labeled them and put different things on here. For example, on the main section, I have my left, right, center, side, and rears for the theater because the event manager might want to pull those things up and down. They're too loud, or I'm running this thing. So what I did was I went in here and grabbed a fader, right, and dragged it over in here, and then resized it based on what I want it to look like. And then once I got it looking the way I wanted to, over here in the properties, this is where you can go in and say, okay, what do I actually want that to be? Do I want it to be level or crosspoint level? What kind of channel type? Is it an input, a zone, a room, a control group? Anything that you want that thing to control, that's where you select it. So if I wanted it to be a zone, for example, I pick zone, and what zone do I want it to be? Okay. Do I want it audio taper, or do I want, again, to be able to set minimum and maximum volume as the online person asked, right, in the chat? Yes, this is one of those places you can set that up. Okay. You can even go in here and change, when you select this, the fonts that you want it to be. You can change the image. You can go in here, change the background image for each one of those individually. There's a lot of design choices that you can make.
Yeah, and we actually include a bunch of resource packs as well.
Yes.
Inside of it, so you don't have to go find your own JPEGs for
Right.
buttons and things like that. There's a ton of them.
You have a ton of things that they can be, or you can use your own, right? You can, use. I saw somebody had a design online, one of the online designs where it's little footballs, or, like whatever you want it to be. It can be any JPEG image you want, okay? And that's the same for buttons. There's text boxes here that I'm using. So you can see really quickly how easy it is to set something up. You've got meters, but anything down the side here, I can put a clock on here if I want to and set that clock. And the cool thing is this little play button will allow you to kind of demo it and see what it looks like. So you can see it working in real time and see how these things work and mute and unmute and make sure it looks the way you want it to, right? And then when you want to upload these things, when you've got all this set up, the way that you want it to be, right? If I wanted to upload that thing up to the to something I had connected here, a couple of different ways. So I go to play. I can connect to the unit itself, right? And hang on. I'm doing this all in real time, so you're seeing how the sausage is made. So you notice I'm online right here. So now this is actually interacting with the AHM that I have online, and that way I can test it out. So if I'm on site and I'm building this out, I can test it and see how it goes. But I have the ability underneath here to be able to upload, download this to the system. So if I wanted this and this is the way I wanted to do it, I can click on upload and upload it directly to the system. And now it's running on there. So here in the room, I have it running on I have this particular one running on the CC7. And if you're in the room and you would like to see the bartender one, I have it set up. If I go to the layout manager and show this one, this layout is running on Wi-Fi. So you can actually, if you have the the custom control app on your phone, you can connect to the open AHM Wi-Fi that I've set up just for this one and actually interact with this system on your own. So it's a BYOD situation. So I can go in here, for example, on my phone, since I already have it on there. I see the AHM 2.4, which is what I've named my network. I connect to it, and then I go over into my CC app. It asks me if I want to log in as bartender because I have a password set up on it. And I connect, and then I have this exact custom control app running as soon as my phone pulls it up. So very quick and very easy. So
yeah, I think we're kind of running out of time on the stream.
Exactly.
So,
I was trying to move through fairly quickly.
Yeah, and so custom control essentially gives you a simplified user interface for all of the heavy processing stuff that we spent time looking at today. That can go on any piece of glass. It can be, as he said, it could be a PC, it could be a Mac, it could be an iPad, it could be one of our control panels, it could be an Android tablet, any piece of glass this can run on. So that gives you all of the power in a very simplified interface.
Yes.
With
So,
that,
yes. So just to wrap up, right? Save time, save money. Okay, it's an off-the-shelf, easy to use, easy to set up piece, no hidden cost, so you're not getting hit with costs for apps or software or any of that stuff. Automatic firmware matching, so you're not having to go on site after you've done your install to, oh, this piece is not talking to this piece because it automatically updated and now I can't use anything, right? It's going to save you time and money on that front. No compromises because it's using Allen Heath's proven audio quality, FPGA engine technology. Super easy to learn, and it's a really, it's a go-to solution for any kind of audio processing. Flexible architecture, get going quickly. 3-year warranty, very important. You don't get a lot of digital products with a 3-year warranty. And last but not least, if you feel like I've hit you with way too much information for you to remember, there is online training on Allen Heath's webpage. Just go to allen-heath.com/courses/ahm-online-training.com. And the web address is right there on the bottom.
yeah, I think it's the learning tab now, right from the top. We'll get you there as well.
Yeah.
So.
So very simple. Yes. So any questions? Fire hose of information. I would like to thank everybody for sticking around. We went about 2 minutes over what we had planned on doing. So hopefully you got the information you need. And again, feel free to ask any questions. Anybody in the room or online, any questions, reach out to your Sound Productions sales guy, and they will have the answers for you. All right. Thanks, everybody.